Envision this. A cluster of drones, dozens of them slicing through the dark sky above the Gulf. They buzz like furious insects. They are inexpensive. They are disposable. And they're directed straight at American troops. Now envision the reaction. Not a Patriot missile battery, not a billion-dollar warship, a drone the dimensions of a rucksack, a 3D printed interceptor that resembles something from a hobbyist garage. It rockets upward at nearly 200 miles per hour, fixes onto the approaching danger using AI-powered tracking and heat sensing, and then collision. The Shahed detonates safely above the wasteland, scattering debris falling down on barren ground. That is the future of aerial protection. And the nation that created it is not the United States. It is not Israel. It is not Saudi Arabia. It is Ukraine. Welcome back to Bradley Madden. If you are unfamiliar here, this channel is where we analyze the narratives that count with the information, the examination, and the precision that you won't discover elsewhere. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the ideal moment. Press that subscribe button and ensure you've activated notifications so you never skip a breakdown like this one, because today we are going thorough. We are going to share with you about one of the most extraordinary geopolitical and defense shifts of the 21st century. A nation battling for its own existence for 4 grueling years, abruptly finding itself at the heart of a completely different confrontation on the opposite side of the globe. A nation whose creations, forged out of urgency and requirement, are now being sought by the most formidable military coalition on Earth. And a drone so brilliantly basic, so remarkably efficient that it has the capacity to overturn the entire expense calculation of contemporary combat on its head. This is the account of Ukraine, the Sting Interceptor, and how a country battling Russia is now assisting to counter Iran. Let us begin at the start. February 28, 2026, the United States Central Command from Israel commenced the most substantial American military campaign in the Middle East since the Iraq War. Operation Epic Fury, as CENTCOM designated it. The declared goals were extensive. Eliminate Iran's ballistic missile facilities, disassemble its nuclear capabilities, remove IRGC commanders, and disable Iran's capacity to endanger the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump revealed the operations himself through an 8-minute recording uploaded to Truth Social at 2 a.m. Eastern Time. No official speech to Congress, just a war powers declaration and a gang of 8 consultation. In the initial hours, the operations were overwhelming. According to Defense Update, satellite pictures verified the elimination of vital locations inside Tehran, including the residence of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iran's drone and rotorcraft vessel, the Irish Shahed Bagheri, a modified cargo ship designed for deploying Shahed variant UVs from the ocean, was struck within hours of the initial operations and destroyed. Iran's maritime UV deployment platform eliminated. But Iran retaliated forcefully, and the armament it selected was not a ballistic missile. It was not a combat aircraft. It was not a naval warship. It was the ordinary Shahed drone. Affordable, factory-produced, and deployed in staggering quantities, hundreds at a time, converging toward American installations, petroleum sites, diplomatic compounds, and public infrastructure throughout the Middle East. According to NPR, in the initial days of the confrontation, 6 American military personnel were lost when an Iranian drone impacted a U.S. command facility in Kuwait. Several oil installations in the United Arab Emirates were damaged. 2 Iranian drones crashed directly into the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, igniting a blaze. The U.S. Embassy in Iraq was targeted as well. In principal Gulf metropolises, as James Patton Rogers, executive director of Cornell University's Brooks Tech Policy Institute and a prominent drone combat specialist, characterized it to NPR, a type of fortification took effect, with residents taking cover from an unending barrage. The arithmetic was instantly punishing. A Shahed 136 costs Iran approximately between $20,000 and $50,000 to manufacture. According to both NPR and KBS, the typical U.S. reaction, launching a Patriot Interceptor projectile, costs roughly $4 million per launch. THAAD interceptors, which have additionally been utilized in operations, are even costlier. Iran was draining the United States financially, not with advanced armaments, but with affordable, throwaway aerial vehicles. And it worsens. Zelensky himself disclosed that in merely the opening 3 days of Operation Epic Fury, the United States expended 800 Patriot missiles. 800, at $4 million apiece. That is $3.2 billion consumed in 72 hours, not on overcoming Iran's traditional forces on clearing drones from the skies. As Kelly Greco, a senior fellow at the Stimson Center, explained to NPR, Iran's approach has been devastatingly successful. The imbalance in expense has enabled Tehran to escalate the price of the confrontation for the United States in manners that even the wealthiest armed forces on Earth cannot maintain forever. NPR additionally documented that U.S. authorities speaking anonymously because they were not permitted to remark publicly were already voicing worry about Interceptor inventory quantities within the opening weeks of hostilities, with some anxious. The U.S. could exhaust its interceptors before Iran depleted its drone inventory. This is the dilemma that nobody wished to address. A dilemma that defense analysts had been cautioning about for years. As Dara Massakat, a security researcher who spoke with NPR, expressed it candidly, the potency of affordable drones had garnered significant focus from U.S. defense strategists, with many symposiums, seminars, and task forces concentrating on the matter. But somehow, she noted that didn't convert into implementing affordable layered protections at some of these locations. Now, she continued, the U.S. was accomplishing it in real time, rushing to complete it when it could have been finished earlier. Rushing. That is the term. The most capable military in human civilization rushing to handle drones that cost less than a pre-owned automobile. Enter Ukraine. Here is where the account takes a direction that nobody foresaw. While the U.S. was struggling from the expense and persistence of Iran's drone assaults, a petition went out discreetly, urgently into Kiev. On March 5th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky declared on X that his administration had obtained a formal petition from the United States for targeted assistance in defeating Shaheds in the Middle East theater. I issued directives, Zelensky composed, to deliver the essential resources and guarantee the deployment of Ukrainian professionals who can ensure the necessary protection. He included a pointed statement about Ukraine's willingness to assist the allies that had helped it protect itself against Russia's aggression. Those remarks weren't merely diplomatic courtesies. They were a declaration of influence because Ukraine understood precisely what it possessed. For years of combating the identical drones that Iran is currently deploying against American personnel, the identical Shahed 136 configuration, the identical approaches, the identical swarm methodology. Iran commenced shipping these drones to Russia shortly after Putin initiated his comprehensive assault in February 2022. As reported, it wasn't long before Iran and Russia executed a profitable licensing arrangement that permitted Moscow to manufacture Shahed variant drones on Russian territory with Iranian technical backing. Hundreds of thousands have subsequently been constructed and directed at Ukrainian municipalities, Ukrainian energy systems, and Ukrainian military members. For 4 years, Ukraine has existed under Shahed onslaughts. And for 4 years, Ukraine has been creating, evaluating, perfecting, and mass manufacturing its solution. What is that solution? The Sting. According to the Jerusalem Post, which toured Wild Hornets, the independent Ukrainian company that engineered it, the Sting is an FPV interceptor drone, first-person perspective, meaning it is controlled by an operator utilizing VR headsets who observes precisely what the drone detects in real time. Characterized by Wild Hornets evaluation pilot Paskudnik, a designation that translates to unpleasant fellow as something you must experience to comprehend. The Sting races across the heavens with a frightening shriek, maneuvering with remarkable nimbleness. It resembles, honestly, somewhat like a winged decorative fixture. It does not appear like a formidable armament until it contacts something. The technical details reveal the actual narrative. The Sting can attain velocities of up to 315 kilometers per hour. That is approximately 196 miles per hour, with certain configurations reportedly achieving even greater velocities, depending on the variant. It functions at a ceiling altitude of 7 kilometers, roughly 4.3 miles, and possesses a coverage of 37 kilometers, approximately 23 miles. It transports a warhead of 500 grams, slightly over 1 pound, merging detonation energy with momentum force and the consequent explosion of the Shahed's own payload to eliminate its objective. And here's the figure that transforms everything. The Sting costs approximately $1,000 to $2,000 to construct. Reuters has referenced a sum of roughly $2,000 as an international selling point. According to the Jerusalem Post, Wild Hornets is currently producing more than 10,000 units from its assembly facilities every single month. The Sting has neutralized more than 3,000 Russian Shaheds since beginning standard deployment in June 2025. As of February 24, 2026, according to United 24 Media, Ukraine's Interceptor drones currently represent 30% of all of the nation's aerial protection neutralizations. 30%. And that proportion is only climbing. Let us calculate the figures again. Iran deploys 5 Shaheds. Total expense to Iran approximately between $100,000 and $250,000. The U.S. employs 5 Patriot projectiles. Total expense to the U.S. $20 million. But if the U.S. employs Sting interceptors alternatively, 5 Stings total expense, $10,000 at maximum. Not only does that remove the economic weapon that Iran is brandishing, it reverses the complete strategic formula. Abruptly, it is Iran investing $50,000 per drone for armaments that are being defeated by $1,000 aerial devices. The attritional catastrophe Iran was engineering for the U.S. becomes Iran's own attritional catastrophe. That is not a minor matter. That is a transformation in the financial dynamics of aerial protection. You are watching Bradley Madden. And if this variety of comprehensive investigative reporting is what you're seeking, please take a moment right now, press subscribe, and activate that notification bell. We address these narratives every week with this degree of thoroughness, and you do not want to skip what's approaching. Now, there is a dimension to this account that extends deeper than merely the drones themselves. Because Ukraine isn't merely dispatching equipment to the Gulf, it is dispatching expertise. On March 17th, Zelensky shared an announcement on X verifying that 2011 Ukrainian drone professionals were already stationed in the Middle East and the Gulf territory, with another 34 prepared to station. These authorities are functioning in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, and agreements are being structured with additional nations. This is not a symbolic action. This is a complete transmission of 4 years of battle-earned operational knowledge. Consider what that knowledge actually represents. Ukrainian controllers have piloted interceptors in environments of severe electronic combat. They have contended with Russian interference, Russian GPS manipulation, Russian efforts to hijack drone transmissions. They have repelled Shahed clusters deployed from Russia utilizing the exact same strategy that Iran is currently executing in the Gulf. When Ukrainian professionals convene with U.S. and Gulf counterparts to demonstrate how to manage these interceptors, they are not reciting from a guidebook. They are drawing on thousands of operational hours. As the Jerusalem Post indicates, Wild Hornets has stated that transitioning a proficient FPV drone controller to the Sting platform requires only 3 to 4 days of instruction. That is how natural the interfaces are. For a defense operator already experienced with drone platforms, the adaptation period is practically non-existent. The knowledge deficit that the U.S. and its partners face in handling Shahed clusters is precisely the deficit that Ukraine has already invested for years eliminating. And yet, here is where the account takes another surprising direction. Not everybody is agreeable with receiving Ukraine's assistance. As documented by NPR and substantiated by numerous sources, including Cape BS and the Connecticut Public Radio Network, President Trump openly declined Ukraine's proposal of Sting drones in a conversation on Fox News. "We don't require their assistance in drone protection." Trump stated, "We understand more about drones than everyone. We possess the finest drones in the world." Frankly, That declaration drew skepticism throughout the defense establishment because it arrived as 6 American personnel lay deceased from Iranian drone impacts as U.S. Interceptor reserves were being consumed at $3.2 billion per 72 hours as U.S. authorities were confidentially informing NPR they were concerned about depleting their projectiles. According to the War Zone, when U.S. Central Command's Admiral Brad Cooper was questioned specifically about Ukrainian interceptors at a media session at CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa, he did not mirror the president's rejection. Instead, he recognized the wider expense challenge. If I simply look back a couple of years, recall what you constantly heard? We're eliminating a $50,000 drone with a $2 million projectile. Cooper stated the U.S. does possess its own counter-drone solutions in progress. On February 28th, according to Army recognition, CENTCOM verified the inaugural combat deployment of the LUCAS, the low-cost uncrewed combat assault system against Iranian objectives during Operation Epic Fury. LUCAS is itself created from a comprehensive reverse analysis of the Shahed 136 structure built by Arizona-headquartered Spectre Works. It costs roughly $35,000 per piece. It can operate for approximately 6 hours, engage at extended distance, and be deployed in significant numbers from surface launchers or transportable stations. The U.S. in reality has embraced a variant of the Shahed strategy, employing it aggressively against Iran rather than protectively against its drones. But LUCAS is a single-use offensive weapon. It is not an interceptor. It does not address the protective expense challenge. Independently, as documented by Military Times on March 20th, General Gregory Guillot, leader of both NORAD and U.S. Northern Command, testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee that a counter-drone portable system effectively neutralized a drone danger over a critical U.S. facility in the initial hours of Operation Epic Fury. That platform employs a self-navigating interceptor drone named Anvil, which targets and physically collides with hostile drones from the air. Guillot verified that U.S. Northcom anticipates obtaining more of these systems in late spring. The U.S. is not lacking its own capabilities, but it is constructing them under combat in real time at tremendous expense against an opponent that commenced this conflict with 4 years of polished Shahed methods already in its arsenal. And Ukraine possessed the pre-made solution, affordable, validated, accessible, prepared to be utilized. Which leads us to Ukraine's genuine objective here, because this is not merely about drones. This is about the extended strategy. Zelensky has been remarkably candid about Ukraine's strategic calculations. On March 15th, as documented by Reuters, he clarified that Ukraine is not becoming directly engaged in Operation Epic Fury as a belligerent. But he conveyed something else entirely. For us today, both the innovations and the financing are critical. He stated, "That declaration is accomplishing significant work. Let us examine it. Ukraine is presenting interceptors and knowledge at a period when it urgently requires 2 objectives. First, revenue to maintain and grow its own defense manufacturing. Second, sophisticated Western armament platforms, additional air protection projectiles, more cutting-edge systems that it cannot fabricate independently. Ukraine has already communicated to the U.S. and its Middle Eastern counterparts, according to a Business Insider article from March 18th, that it can deliver up to 1,000 Sting interceptors per day. If we apply Reuters' international pricing of $2,000 per piece, that is $2 million of income per day. Over a year, if requirements are maintained, that is $730 million yearly flowing into Ukraine's defense industry. But revenue is only one component. There is additionally the question of influence with the Trump administration. As the New York Times detailed in a March 9th examination, Ukraine's deployment of drones and professionals to the Middle East provides Kyiv a compelling diplomatic case at precisely the juncture when Washington is attempting to negotiate a truce between Ukraine and Russia. The case is direct. Ukraine is a benefit to the United States, not a burden. Ukraine is the nation that 4 years prior stood independently against the biggest ground assault in Europe since World War II, compelled Russia to consume through trillions of rubles, and in the journey became the most combat-seasoned drone authority on Earth. And now at America's hour of requirement in the Middle East, Ukraine responded. Russia, by comparison, has allegedly been furnishing surveillance and drone capabilities to Iran during Operation Epic Fury, which indicates the identical nation that Putin professes to have positive ties with. The nation he maintains is a strategic collaborator of the West, is directly supporting the government that is eliminating American troops with drones. Ukraine's communication to Washington could not be plainer. Ukraine supports the United States, Russia supports Iran. Decide appropriately. And Zelensky rendered the influence unmistakable. On March 17th, he declared openly, "We are prepared to extend comparable arrangements to all our dependable allies, from hands-on collaboration on drones to prospective security partnerships." And I don't believe anyone would choose to exclude Ukraine's combat-validated capabilities and capacity outside their protection. If anybody does, it wouldn't be prudent. That is not an ultimatum. It is a declaration of geopolitical reality. In a planet where drone combat has become the characterizing element of 21st century hostilities, Ukraine is the nation that understands how to conduct it, how to endure it, and how to prevail in it. And the Gulf nations are taking notice. Saudi Arabia provided $400 million in assistance to Ukraine back in 2023, well before any of this occurred. Qatar has functioned as an unofficial facilitator in campaigns to reconnect Ukrainian and Russian miners separated by the conflict. But now, as the Arab Weekly has observed, Ukraine is establishing itself not simply as an armament provider, but as the cornerstone of something greater, a collection of strategic interdependencies that could develop into fresh alliances, fresh assistance frameworks, and fresh political supporters that Putin never expected having to confront. The UAE and Qatar are among those allegedly expressing substantial enthusiasm in Ukrainian interceptors, as observed by aerospace analysts following the developments. And why wouldn't they? The UAE has sustained some of the most intense Iranian drone bombardment of the whole confrontation. Several oil installations damaged. Public infrastructure endangered. A country of towering structures suddenly confronting the identical variety of evening drone warnings that Kiev has withstood for 4 years. Ukraine comprehends what that feels like, and Ukraine comprehends how to address it. There is additionally the inquiry of what Wild Hornets, the independent company behind the sting, is accomplishing to advance the capabilities. According to the Jerusalem Post, a next-generation sting has already been engineered. It is swifter. It is intended to address a more advanced, more formidable class of danger, the turbine-propelled Shaheds that Russia has been producing and enhancing throughout the conflict. These upgraded drones are tougher to neutralize, quicker, and more agile than the conventional propeller-driven Shahed 136. Ukraine is already developing countermeasures. That is what 4 years of uninterrupted development under combat generates. Now, let us step back and examine the complete strategic landscape, because here is something remarkable that merits being expressed directly. A nation that the broader world anticipated to collapse in 72 hours in February 2022 has 4 years afterward become the globe's foremost authority in one of the most significant domains of contemporary combat. Ukraine did not opt to become a drone powerhouse. It was compelled to become one by circumstance, by hardship, by thousands of technicians and operators and fighters who had no alternative but to create or perish. And the breakthroughs they generated, the sting, the interceptor philosophy, the stratified drone protection methodology, are now being analyzed, solicited, and reproduced by the strongest military coalition in existence. That is a narrative that nearly challenges credibility. And yet, here we stand. Now, not everything in this account resolves simply. There is still the issue of Trump's public rejection of Ukrainian drone support. There is still the procedural reality that, as the war zone documented, Ukrainian drone producers, including Wild Hornets, are presently restricted from shipping Sting drones without formal governmental clearance. And Ukraine's expressed objective remains its own protection. Wild Hornets representative Alex Roslin informed the war zone directly, "Our objective is Ukraine's protection." The company additionally rejected that it was in direct discussions with Saudi Aramco to market interceptors for safeguarding petroleum installations, contesting Wall Street Journal coverage that referenced unnamed informants making that assertion. So the situation is nuanced. Ukraine desires to contribute diplomatically, tactically, economically. Its administration is stationing professionals. Zelensky is extending the proposals publicly and assertively, but the shipping channel is not completely accessible. And on the American front, the governmental resolve to welcome Ukrainian support hinges on who in Washington is directing the decision. What is not nuanced is the capability itself. The Sting performs. It has eliminated more than 3,000 Shaheds in warfare. It accomplishes success percentages of between 80 and 90%. It is manufactured at a pace of more than 10,000 pieces per month. And Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council has verified that in 2025 alone, the nation constructed 100,000 interceptor drones. With manufacturing volume now reportedly expanding eightfold, Ukraine asserts it can fabricate up to 800,000 interceptor drones per year if sufficiently resourced. 800,000 interceptors per year at $1 to $2,000 apiece against an opponent whose central offensive armament costs $20,000 to $50,000 per piece. The calculation is not ambiguous. Iran constructed its drone methodology around a basic assumption: compel the United States to invest enormously more on protection than Iran invests on aggression. It is the identical reasoning that has propelled asymmetric combat for generations. Exhaust the Titan. Deplete its reserves. Render the confrontation financially untenable. It is an intelligent methodology. It is additionally potentially a disastrously fragile one because the instant the opposing party discovers an affordable, expandable response, the whole methodology disintegrates. The Sting is that response, and Iran recognizes it. As documented on March 19th, 5 Iranian drones were captured heading toward eastern Saudi Arabia and the main city of Riyadh. Those 5 drones were eliminated, contributing to the 13 projectiles and drones that Saudi Arabia had earlier neutralized. Iran is still deploying. The clusters have diminished. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has asserted that Iran's drone deployments have decreased by 95% relative to the initial volleys of Operation Epic Fury. The consequence of persistent operations on Iran's drone manufacturing and deployment locations, but 95% is not 100%. Shaheds are still airborne. Diplomatic compounds are still being targeted. Petroleum installations are still being attacked. And every Shahed that still operates is a justification for the Sting. Because here is the ultimate unavoidable reality of this juncture. The period of affordable drone combat is not concluding. It is intensifying. Iran originated the widespread utilization of disposable UVs for tactical impact. Russia enhanced it. Now every participant in the globe with the capital and the determination to construct a drone capability is observing, studying, and forming assessments about how to conduct the conflicts of tomorrow. The Shahed methodology will be duplicated. It will be modified. It will resurface in confrontations that have no connection to Iran or Russia. The only enduring solution is a stratified, economically viable protection, not one that depends solely on million-dollar interceptors to eliminate $20,000 drones, but one that counters affordable with affordable, cluster with cluster, drone with drone. Ukraine determined that under combat with constrained assets against a nuclear authority that was vigorously attempting to eliminate it. And the globe is ultimately paying attention. What Zelensky has constructed through 4 years of evolution and perseverance is not merely a military. It is a proving ground, an authentic operational environment for the trajectory of combat, functioning at a magnitude and severity that no peacetime innovation and engineering initiative could duplicate. The insights acquired in the atmosphere over Kharkiv and Kyiv are the identical insights that U.S. and Gulf officers are urgently attempting to implement over Kuwait and Riyadh. And the nation that absorbed those insights the most difficult way conceivable is now steadily becoming one of the most tactically significant allies in the globe, not in spite of being at conflict as a result of it. That is the comprehensive overview. If this variety of examination matters to you, subscribe to the channel immediately if you haven't previously. Every week, we provide you this caliber of depth on the confrontations and occurrences that are defining the globe. Activate notifications so you never overlook an installment. And if you consider this analysis worthwhile, distribute it because this is the variety of content that warrants a broader viewership. Stay educated. Stay perceptive. We'll meet you in the following one.